We need to be thinking about how can we increase your margins? Because with the margins comes the wiggle room with money and time and brain space for you to be able to grow your business and get off the hamster wheel. Welcome to Profit and Prosper, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are ready to make some money while doing what they love. On this podcast, we're going to pull back the curtain and talk about all things business and money, but I promise you this is not your typical boring numbers talk. I'm your host, Sarah Young, a CPA and CFO with over a decade of experience in finance, business, and leadership. I'm going to share everything I've learned from helping my clients grow more profitable businesses and keep more of what they earn while growing my own successful business along the way. You'll feel empowered and confident that you too can grow your wealth, live a rich life, and have an impact. Stick with me and you might even start to think that finance is fun. Let's dive in. Are you on the cash flow hamster wheel in your business where it seems like every dollar that comes in the door flies right back out again and it's really hard for you to get ahead? I know that a lot of you listening to this feel that way or have felt that way in the past. And the reality is, I think in business that there are just going to be times when cash flow is tight. That is just a fact of life. But I think that what we can do is make sure that we maximize your profit margins in your business so that the times where cash flow is tight, the times where you are on the hamster wheel are hopefully, as your business keeps growing, fewer and far between. So the hamster wheel is not a fun place to be. And I know that it can be hard to feel like you jump off of that. So on the hamster wheel, I think a lot of business owners just feel like the way to make more money is just making more sales, constantly continuing to run on the wheel and bring in more clients and more customers and keep bringing more money in just to keep up with the money flying out the door. Whether that money is on your business expenses or personal expenses, or maybe you have debt, maybe you need to put money for taxes. If you get behind on saving for taxes, any of that can be cash flying out the door, right? So ultimately, I think what we can do is think about how can we increase your margins? So I think that there are three main things you can do in order to increase your margins, and that's what I want to talk about in this episode. The first thing I think that we can do to increase your margins is probably the least sexy thing. That is knowing your numbers. When I say you need to know your numbers, I don't mean you need to have memorized every single thing, like every revenue number that you have. Like y'all, I can hardly remember what my revenue was last month. I'm really terrible at remembering specific numbers. But what I really mean by knowing your numbers is just you need to have the underlying data of how much money is coming in on a consistent basis in your business, ballpark, and what are your ongoing overhead expenses? What are the things that you spend on? Where does your money go? I think a lot of people get stuck on this step because you think that in order to do your books, in order to know your numbers, you've got to have QuickBooks, you've got to have everything reconciled to the penny. It's got to be perfect. And I see people get stuck in this area. And I actually, in my program, I used to have a section where, I would say, we've got to know your numbers. Here's how you do your books. Let's take some time and get caught up. And after running through it a few times, I've actually completely taken it out. And I talk about how to know your numbers in a different way. But I've taken out the part where I say, let's dive into your bookkeeping, because I have seen a lot of people, especially those of us who have perfectionist tendencies, stay in that module for way too long. So what I want you to do instead, my ultimate goal, is that you are able to hire a bookkeeper and then they can take care of it and you don't even have to worry about it. So that's my ultimate goal. But in the meantime, what I suggest that people do If you don't already have a bookkeeping system in place that is actually easy for you to maintain, then we are going to come at it from a different way. So instead of saying, you've got to spend hours and hours catching up your entire year's QuickBooks file, what I want people to do to get to a place where they know their numbers is just dig into your bank statements a little bit. And y'all, I think for a lot of you, this might be not as hard as it sounds, but if you don't have super clean financials, then what I want to know are just a few key things. I want to look back at your payment processor, your invoicing system, wherever you're bringing in your revenue, and I want to pull, let's say, the last couple of months of revenue. I want to know, how much have you been bringing in, and bonus points if we can break that out by, offer 1 or offer 2 in your business. So most businesses have more than one thing that they sell, and I want to know how much did each of those things bring in. So basically, you could do this on a piece of paper, go grab your bank statements, grab your payment processor, and just say high level ballpark numbers. How much am I bringing in? That's number 1. The other thing that I want you to do is go and look at what you have spent money on. And again, you can just do a high level ballpark number on this. So going back through your bank transactions and say, how much have I spent on ongoing overhead expenses in my business? And then how much have I spent on one-time projects and investments? So the overhead expenses, I want to separate out from the one-time expenses because I want to know on an ongoing basis, what does your business cost to run? And we look at those numbers critically and say, is there anything we can cut out of those numbers, right? So we want to know your ongoing overhead. We want to minimize or optimize that as much as we can. And then I also separately want you to look at your one-time projects, one-time programs, one-time investments, the more infrequent things in your business. And I want you to assess, were these investments good or not? And so that we can learn from these and see, well, what has worked for you in the past and fix anything that hasn't as you look to make investments in the future. So number 1 thing to get off the hamster wheel is you have got to know your numbers. And my hope is that if you don't have books, we can make this a semi-quick project for you to just dig in and get a ballpark. And I just want you to understand, again, you don't have to know every single number down to the penny every single month in order to answer some of the questions that I want you to answer to build your plan to get off the hamster wheel, to build your plan to increase your margins. The second thing you need to do is look at whether or not your business model is profitable. This might be obvious, but I think if you feel like you are on the hamster wheel, then you might want to step back and reassess, okay? So we need to be thinking about how can we increase your margins? Because with the margins comes the wiggle room with money and time and brain space for you to be able to grow your business and get off the hamster wheel. So I think you heard me in episode 36 a couple weeks ago. I talked about this idea of growth mode versus profit mode. And I think the problem is either people tend to always want to be in growth mode when hopefully if you've listened to my podcast for a while, you are on board with the idea that you're not always 100% of the time going to be in growth mode. It's okay to be in stabilizing or profit mode every now and then, okay? But I think that if we are constantly trying to be in growth mode, then you're never going to be in profit mode. And profit mode is where the cash flow comes in. So when you are in profit mode, that means that your business is operating within its capacity and it is generating enough cash flow, not just to pay expenses and to pay you, but to have some extra left over. And so I want us to step back and think about, is your business model capable of being in profit mode in the first place? I think a lot of people, don't have that. So what we can do is look at the two levers of cash flow to make you more money. So the lever 1 is increasing sales. Lever 2 is decreasing expenses. So you want to look at either one of those or both and say, how can I pull these levers and make more money in my business. So lever one, to increase sales, a lot of people default to, I just need to get more eyeballs, more leads, more customers, and that will solve all my problems. But if your offer, if your business model is not designed to be profitable, then more revenue does not mean you're going to finally make a profit. It just means you're running faster on the hamster wheel. Once you've made 100K in sales, what does it take to save 100K? I'm on a mission to help 1,000 entrepreneurs turn their business's cash flow into $100,000 in wealth, whether that comes from paying off debt, saving more money, investing into retirement accounts, or reinvesting into your business to build a cash flowing asset. That's $100 million in capital in the hands of world-changing business owners just like you. Can you imagine the impact that would have? Building the first 100K in investments from your business would be life-changing. It'll teach you the money habits and financial strategy that you need to get you not just 100K, but eventually to financial freedom. I want to help you stop being self-employed and constantly on the cash flow hamster wheel. Let's elevate you into a CEO that thinks about their money like I do. I've been hard at work here behind the scenes, revamping my Profit and Prosper group program into a deeper 12-month coaching program that'll teach you my signature in-for-profit method for building 100K in net worth. And it officially relaunches on October 24th. I'll be your CFO and financial coach for an entire year as you go through the seasons of your business. I'll help you implement my profit method and turn your business's cash flow into wealth. Go to profitandprosper.co/join now or the link in the show notes to learn more and sign up. So how can you increase your revenue without necessarily having to get more customers? I think there's a few ways you could do this. I'm going to list out a few. So first and foremost, the fastest way is probably going to be increasing your prices. And that might mean that, if you haven't increased your prices in a while, maybe you can just increase them without really having to offer anything new to your customers, right? Maybe you've been in business longer, you're more of an expert at what you do, your product is better, and you can just justify, hey, I'm better at what I do, therefore I can increase my prices. Or maybe you shift your strategy and say, what if I come out with a new offer that is high ticket, more premium, more high touch, but, maybe relatively speaking, like it doesn't necessarily require more time to produce, but however you structure your offer produces more value to your customers. So that could be, like my story of shifting from bookkeeping to CFO, or last week you heard Kristen's story of increasing her prices and providing a more high touch service. So looking at ways like how can you increase your prices? Another thing that you might be able to do is say, maybe you just increase your average customer value, meaning instead of necessarily getting more customers, are there ways that you can get more value out of your existing customers by bundling what they buy or getting them to come back and become repeat customers, right? They already like you. So how easy would it be for you to get them to come back and buy something else from you? All of those things you can do generally with more ease than just going out and getting on the hamster wheel of making more sales. I also want to put in a plug for assessing your sales and marketing pipeline here. A lot of people default to thinking that when you want to make more money and make more sales, you have to go get more eyeballs and more leads. And that may not always be true. I always recommend that people start tracking their conversions. I want you to start tracking your sales calls. How many calls do you have and how many calls do you close? And are there ways that you can increase that conversion? Meaning the time that you do spend on sales calls is more effective because more people are going to close. The same can go if you sell, an online course, if you sell a product, you want to look at your conversion, meaning how many people come to your website to see what you're selling and how many buy. Are there things that you can do? Because those customers coming in, a lot of times if you have a product, they are costly because a lot of people, you have to go pay ads or do something like that to get them to even come to you in the first place. So how can you maximize your cost of acquiring a customer by increasing your conversion rate? I think a lot of times people ignore that part and they go instead to the vanity metrics of I need more followers on Instagram, I need more people hitting my website, I need more leads, and that's not always the best way to increase your margins. The other lever you can pull is looking at your overhead expenses. So I want you to understand there's a difference between ongoing overhead expense and one-time investments. So in the last little bit where I said we want to know your numbers, I want you to know how much do you spend on a regular basis on your team costs, if you rent an office or workspace, if you have software subscriptions, any of those things, the ongoing expenses, how much are you spending there? And then how much are you spending on investments? So when we think about just your ongoing business model, in this case, let's focus on your overhead. How can you minimize your overhead expense and still maintain your capacity, still maintain the quality of what you're selling? And so that's why it's really helpful to know your numbers so you can look at them and assess and say, okay, is my team at capacity? Am I using all of this software? Are there things I can do that would cost less money on a regular basis? So we want to look at your overhead expenses and just make sure that you are optimizing those. I'm really not somebody who necessarily advocates for being frugal. Like, I'm not going to give you a hard time about your Canva subscription, y'all. Like, I don't care. I don't really think that that moves the needle, but I think zooming out big picture, looking at your overhead expenses, we need to make sure that they're optimized, okay? So profitable business model is your second piece to get off the hamster wheel because this is where we are going to create the margin. The third element is leverage. And I think that leverage really is the difference between being self-employed and having a business. Business owners generally are going to learn the skill of how to use leverage, how to leverage, pun intended, but that is a skill. So a couple episodes ago, you heard me talk about bootstrapping, where, bootstrapping really is just relying on yourself primarily to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And the opposite, I would say, of bootstrapping is using leverage. But I think that most people probably are not using leverage because we are trained in the United States. I think this is just our culture. We are trained to think that bootstrapping it is better, is, going to be the way that we make more money. And we view using leverage as sometimes risky. We view leverage as sometimes cheating. So I was actually reading a book a couple weeks ago, and I put a screenshot of the foreword on my Instagram stories where the guy basically said, we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We don't cheat and use other people's money or use outside capital to grow our businesses. And my question was, is that really cheating? Is it cheating or is it smart? And then a couple paragraphs later, he basically says, yeah, we want to make money from bootstrapping our businesses. Essentially, we want to make more money and then give our kids all the advantages that we didn't have. And what I read from that was we want to give our kids the advantages of knowing how to use leverage and having these skills. And so let's not think of it that way. Using leverage is not cheating. I think that this is a skill that a business owner is going to have because there comes a point where you realize you cannot do it all in your business. This is something that most of us probably learned the hard way by wearing all the hats, doing all the things, and getting stressed out. So there's a couple different ways you can use leverage in your business. Let's talk about those kind of quickly, okay? Number one is using other people's money. Or sometimes I would even put into this bucket using your personal money in your business. So an example would be, let's say I want to scale up my group program, and I decide that to do that, I need to invest in ads. I need to hire somebody to run ads. I need to spend the money on ads. And this is going to be a giant test and it might fail miserably. And this is true. This is actually something I'm working on in my business. And in order to do that, we can stick with the profit that we have generated in our business, which may limit you as to how much you can spend by how much profit have you set aside, or how much can you allocate from your ongoing budget every month, which depending on how big your business is, may not be enough to really make a dent. Or my husband and I actually had this conversation. We were like, what if I got comfortable with the idea of taking a chunk of money out of our personal savings account and using that to invest in my business, right? What if I did that? Is that cheating? I certainly don't think it's bootstrapping because I didn't generate that savings from my business in this case. You could also use somebody else's money if you wanted to take on a loan to start a business or expand your business or to buy equipment. That is using leverage. It's using money that is, not something that you generated internally, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, you obviously want to be smart about using money as your leverage because, with any investment, there is some level of risk and you want to make sure, like worst case scenario, what if it fails? What's going to happen to you, right? Are you using all of your life savings in this case and if it fails, then, you're totally screwed. Maybe this isn't a good way to use leverage, right? But there's different ways to think about that. And, in my case, if I said, hey, I'm going to put this money from my personal account in for this investment, then, I'm using the leverage of that money is going to get me a result a heck of a lot faster than it would if I just used took some of the budget from my ongoing expenses. So one way to use leverage is other people's money. Another way is using other people's time. And that really just means hiring a team. And that might mean hiring in terms of, yes, maybe you have an employee, or maybe you just say, hey, I have a project. I need to redo all the slides for my program. This is a true story. I want to refilm all of it. I need to redo all the slides. Maybe I decide it's not a good use of my time to redo all the slides. And so I send that to my VA and say, hey, please help me do this. And in that way, I am able to keep doing my thing and she can use her time to do the slides and get me there faster. Instead of having just 40 hours in a week by using other people's time, you're going to have 80 hours, 100 hours. You're going to increase the time available to get the work done. So that is another way to use leverage. This is an area that honestly I have struggled with. I will be very honest and say this. It is hard to go from being the person who does all the things to then starting to put people in place. At least it's hard for me because I am very used to being the doer. I don't want to be the doer in the long run, which is why I think it's important to acknowledge that it is hard and go do it anyway. So using other people's time is a form of leverage. Another form would be using scalable systems and processes, maybe even automations. So one of the key things I think that you need to invest your time in or money in order to grow your business is in having consistent processes. Consistent offers. This is something that I always talk about with clients when they come in is break down your packages, break down your offers. How are you delivering these? How are you pricing them? Because we don't want you to have a custom package for everything. And even when people try to push back and say, well, we do something a little bit different for everybody, like maybe, but I bet if you step back, you zoom out, you're doing the same thing over and over again on some level. And by creating consistent processes, you are setting something up to where somebody who's not you can come in and do the process, or you could even leverage automations using software systems to do that for you. And then there we go. We have more leverage. We can get more done in the same amount of time or less time. The fourth method of leverage, I would say this is in my sales and marketing bucket, but I would say using other people's audiences and networks to grow faster. So this is probably a more advanced thing where, as my business has grown, I've done more podcast interviews, more speaking engagements. This is where when people invest in PR, trying to get in the newspaper, trying to get on TV, this is using leverage. So you're growing beyond the audience that you have organically grown, and you are using someone else's audience to get in front of more eyeballs and more quickly scale up the number of people that go through your sales and marketing process. So different ways to think about leverage in your business, but I think that being strategic about how you implement leverage is going to help you increase your margins and ultimately make more money. So ultimately, if you are on the cash flow hamster wheel, as I know many people are at one point or another, I want you to understand there is a way out. There is a way to get off the hamster wheel, but you have to be willing to do the sometimes difficult work of looking under the hood at your numbers to say, well, this isn't working well for me, so how can I fix it? And a lot of people really don't like to do that because it's hard to say, this is not working, I need to fix it, right? To acknowledge that. But only by doing that can you make the decisions to move your business forward. So knowing your numbers is step one to getting off the hamster wheel. Number two is making that decision to pull the right levers to create a more profitable business model, because we have to generate more margin every time you make a sale. A lot of times people say to me, I need to make more money before I can build my wealth. By saying I need to make more money, what they mean is they need to make more sales. And I'm like, time out, y'all. Like, are you profitable with what you are offering right now? Are you focusing on the right thing? And in a lot of cases, the answer is no. So we need to step back and create a profitable business model for you second. Third, we need to teach you to think like a business owner and start to use leverage and start to think about the ways that you can make money without your time being directly involved in the money-making process. That is the definition of having a successful business. So if you want to get off the cash flow hamster wheel and start creating more profit margins in your business, profit margins that you can use to build your wealth to the tune of 100K, I want you to go get on the waitlist for my Profit and Prosper group program. This is the final week that you can get on the waitlist, and only the people on the waitlist will get exclusive waitlist only bonus offers. So go do that at trustyoungco.com/prosper. I want us all to get off the hamster wheel and start bringing in more ease and less stress and more money into our businesses. And this is exactly how we do it. So don't forget to get on the waitlist, and I'll see you in next week's episode. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Now, I want you to go take some action. What's one thing you can do this week to create more profit in your business? Send me a DM on Instagram at YoungCoCFO and share your action item with me. If you have a question or topic you'd like me to dive into, or if you're feeling empowered about taking charge of your finances, let's continue the conversation. Go to profitandprosper.co to submit a question or topic for me to talk about on the show. And because we all profit and prosper better with friends, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe wherever you listen, and share the episode. Make sure you tag me at YoungCoCFO on Instagram so I can give you some love, and I'll see you in the next episode.